Hi there everyone, how's it going? It's Isaac here from Sports Addict, and I just want to go over something just regarding Gareth Bale's recent comments during the win after Ukraine that they played to get into the World Cup. In this interview after the match, he was talking about the relentless schedule. In his comments, he said something along the lines of, people like Kevin De Bruyne have to play 72 games a season, and this is far too much. Talk about how there needs to be less competitions, footballers need more time to rest, and things like that. And just what I took away from those comments was, I didn't like the comments. I do agree that there are a lot of football games in a season. With the coming change of the Champions League in a couple seasons' time, where it's a longer group stage and a shorter sort of semi-final, final stage, there's going to be more games even then, because obviously you play more games in the Champions League. You don't play 6 and then you could get knocked out. You could play 10 before you even get knocked out, and that's another 4 games you've got to fit in. But just what I took away from that, I didn't like the comment. It's nothing to do with Gareth Bale. You know, he's a brilliant footballer and I understand his concerns, I really do. There are a lot of games in a season, but just I didn't personally agree with what he was saying. Now, there's a couple of reasons why I don't agree with it, but first I just want to preface this by saying it was a couple of days ago and it's just taken me a few days to film and put this video out, because I didn't want it to be just sort of incoherent gibberish. I wanted it to be a thought out sort of review of what he said and just my personal thoughts on what he'd said and how I thought maybe it wasn't right. Like I say, Gareth Bale can be entitled to his own opinion, that's perfectly fine. And again, I do understand there are a lot of games in a season, but just I want to voice my concerns and sort of disagreements on the subject. So firstly, I disagree with the fact that he's saying there's a lot of games in a season. There's 72 or thereabouts, he said. 72, 76, something like that. That's 1.5 games a week. At the very most, you'll be playing 2 games a week, which we do see. There are very rare instances where you're playing 3, but that is the further you advance in competitions, and that will only be if you get into the final stages of the Carabao FA Cup and the Prem. Those will be, or in the Bundesliga equivalent, the Liga equivalent, Serie A equivalent, you've got your 2 domestic competitions, you've got your main domestic competition in your league, and then you've got the European leagues. If you advance into those 3, obviously you might play more games per week, but on average, you won't be playing more than 2 games a week. And just, for me, professional footballers, such as Kevin De Bruyne, such as Cristiano Ronaldo, such as Paul Pogba, if you're not injured and you're earning the amount you are, Paul Pogba's on something like £400,000 a week, Ronaldo's on £600,000 a week, Kevin De Bruyne will be on close to 400, maybe even 450 a week, £1,000. That is an extortionate amount of money, and to complain that you're having to play at the most 2 games a week is ridiculous. They're complaining that bringing in new competitions is damaging to the sport, but it's not, because us as football fans appreciate watching clubs and seeing our clubs advance further into these competitions and having a chance of winning a trophy. Myself as a United fan, I haven't seen them lift anything since 2017. If they brought in another competition or made a competition sort of more accessible for us to win, that would be great. Bringing in a competition with the Champions League where you've got more chances, it doesn't come down to those little moments. Those, you can, 1 game and you're out. 1 game and you've just got to pick it up on the next game, making the Champions League longer. More games, the littler clubs, such as the Rangers, won't get knocked out of the Champions League at such an early stage. So be in it for longer. Clubs will thrive and earn more revenue. Anyway, as I'm saying, these players complaining that there's more games. You look to players in League 1, Championship, League 2. They're playing, at the very most, all the 40 plus games of the league season, and if they're lucky, they'll advance into a couple more stages of the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup. There have been instances where a couple of teams have gone quite far in it, but it's very unlikely and very rare that these clubs do. These players in these lower league clubs in all the countries where you've got a main division and a second division, those in the second division would kill to play in the competitions that these players are playing in, and they're on a far sight less money. You look at youth players as well. These players that are complaining that they've got to play and saying it's far too physically demanding are on a hell of a lot less money and would still be on that money and would quite happily play every single game in a season just because of the passion and the desire to play in the sport. And a lot of football nowadays is money driven, and people, it's difficult for me to wrap my head around how you can stand there as Gareth did and say there's too many games in a season. You're playing 2 games in a season, earning hundreds of thousands of pounds. And Sky Sports did a post about it, and they put the video in saying this is what Gareth thinks. And a lot of the comments were saying totally agree. And I was looking for a comment that maybe followed a similar mindset I did, because if there wasn't, then maybe I just misunderstood what he said and I needed to reevaluate my thinking. But the further down I got, the more I started to see of what is he on about. You've got people that are working 6 and 7 days a week, earning little to no money, and then you've got Gareth Bale, who's not even starting for Real Madrid most of the time, and that's maybe not his fault. He's gotten a bit older, he's not as good as he once was, but players like that work at the very most 2 days a week, the rest is training and recovery. You can hardly call training, practicing kicking a football, work. I understand work on a match day, because although it's not working as such, it is still playing a game. You're providing an experience. It's like musicians, comedians, actors. You're providing an experience, and that to me is work. And working 1 or 2 days a week, you cannot complain when you're earning as much money as you are. Another thing that he said was the effects later in life are going to be detrimental. And now there's a part of me that agrees and disagrees. There's a post on my written blog about wearing protective headgear. Now, a lot of footballers and ex-footballers have had issues with Alzheimer's and memory loss and stuff like that after they've retired, because of such high collision heading and head collisions and the brutality of the sport. And I understand that probably is an issue, but the FA and UEFA have brought in things where saying you're only allowed 2 high pressure headers a day in training. Obviously in a game they can't limit that, but in training you're allowed 2, and then you get told no more because of the effect it will have. But I think he was more in terms of being physically capable of running. And now, as a footballer, you go into the sport knowing how physically demanding it is. You are conditioned all your life to be the perfect physical machine. You are programmed to be able to do 100-meter sprints. You are programmed to do 90 minutes of constant running, passing, kicking, jumping, everything. That is forced upon you from a young age if you're serious about being a footballer. So you cannot go into it without knowing the physical demands. And it's, again, like I say, all these 15, 16-year-olds that are wanting to break through into professional footballing and being one of the big names, they would kill to play 2 games a week for a professional club. If they could, they'd play 7, just because they play every single day, 90 minutes, just because of the passion and the desire to play the sport. And I disagree with what he's saying in that there's too many games a season because it's physically demanding. I could never do it. I'm nowhere near physically capable enough. And I'm not saying for a minute I think it's easy. I understand it's physically demanding. I can't manage 1 game a week, never mind 1 game a month. I'm just physically incapable of doing such a thing. 90 minutes is a lot for me. And I get what he's saying. It is a physically demanding role. It's constant high pressure, going at it and playing. But to say 1 or 2 games a week, at the very most 3, which is incredibly rare, it's difficult for me. And then he's saying Kevin De Bruyne is likely to get 3 or 4 weeks off this summer. which is probably very true because he's Man City's #1 player, and he's Belgium's #1 player by a long shot. And he will probably get limited time off. But in between the games, it's not like he doesn't play football every day. He'll play a game, he'll have a recovery day where he'll get to either go into the training ground for a bit of stretching and working, making sure he's all right, and then he'll get to go home. Then for the next days leading up to the next game, it'll be training, and he'll still get to go home. He'll get to go home at 3 or 4 o'clock. And he'll get to go home and spend time with his family in his lush Manchester mansion or whatever he has. But this is what I'm saying. He cannot complain that he's only having 3 weeks off, because he's having a lot more than that throughout the week. He's going in to train and play football and recover from the previous game week. And I just disagree with this idea of footballers are put under so much physical stress. They probably are. Footballers have to go physical demands every week, but it is once a week. It is an hour and a half once a week. And people that are on this much money, this much fame, they're known by so many people. They have such a presence and a role in the world. They are providing an experience for tens of thousands of people in the stadium, hundreds of thousands at home. You know, they cannot complain at 2 games a week when they're that much money. If I was earning the same wage that Gareth Bale was, he's on probably something like 100, 200, even 300,000. He is leaving Madrid this season. He probably will drop down to less money because he's looking for somewhere with game time. But even then, the money they're on should mean they should play a game a week, if not 2, because they're earning that much money. It's just not fair. And it doesn't apply to every player. There's a lot of players that do, play 2 games a week and not complain. There are a lot of players that do. But there are some players that just complain that the fixture list is too much. And for that, I disagree. Obviously, I'm not a footballer, so I don't know exactly how it is to experience the physical stress and demands of being a footballer, and I never will. But from an outside perspective, I struggle to see how you do so few days a week, and the most of it is playing football or light training, getting better at football. How you can complain that you're playing too much, because growing up as a footballer, you want to play. You want to play as much as possible, get your name known, get into a big team and start winning and scoring goals, keeping clean sheets if you're a goalkeeper, defending well, getting those assists. You want to be playing well. And the only way you can do that is by playing games. And the only way, if Kevin De Bruyne dropped down from 70 games a season to 40 games a season, not only will Man City not do well, because they'd be missing their prolific star player, but he would probably drop a little bit in form. He'd lose a bit of sharpness. Yeah, all right, he'd probably still be very good, but he's almost halving the amount of game time he's having. He'd drop in form. His physicality would diminish, and he wouldn't be the player he was. And I can see that. I'm not saying for any minute I think Kevin De Bruyne is bad. I'm just saying if he dropped his game time down, he'd lose the sharpness, he'd lose the fitness, and he wouldn't be able to perform the level he's playing at. And the money, I keep saying this, and it feels like I'm a broken record, but the money they are on, they should be able to play the amount of games they're playing every season. So yeah, those are my thoughts. Obviously, if you'd like to leave a comment down below telling me your thoughts, please do. I might have misinterpreted what he said or just misunderstood what he said, so please do let me know if you think any different. Yeah, those are my thoughts. Any different, leave them down below and I'll have a look and I'll have a read. Yeah, subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed. Cheers.